There are a few things in this world that are as good as chips and dips. Why have one when you can have three? We've got spicy tomato and pepper, garlic butterbean, spinach, walnut and feta. Some dips in mind, little nibbly snacky type things. I've had these a while and not really used them other than a couple of times, so I thought chuck those in. So I have 6 in a little bowl. Finished off the barbecue sauce last night and there's still loads of dregs in the bottle, so I'm going to chuck some of that in as well. So I've got water, it's just been off the boil for about 5-10 minutes. So, because if you put boiling hot water in plastic, it distorts, sometimes, depending. Lid on and give it a gentle shake, and then empty that into a saucepan. So there's maybe 200 mils of water. I want to get maximum flavour into the chilies, so I'm hoping that by flavouring the water that I use to rehydrate them, it'll suck in a bit of extra flavour. I've also got a tin of chopped tomatoes. And then I'm just working the tomatoes around in there just to help the juice fall through. I'm trying not to squish them down too much because I don't want a bit of texture in there, a little bit of firmness from the tomatoes. I've decided I want more chilli, so I'm going to put 20 red chillies, dried. The roast garlic and butterbean dip needs a vital ingredient, which is roast garlic. So I'm just going to chop the top bit, not the root, the other end. Slice that down. You just want to expose the cloves. So about that much. And then pour oil into an oven-proof ramekin. Pop the garlic upside down in there. And then I'm putting it in the oven at 160. The reason it's so low is because I'm going to bake some biscuit cracker type things. I'll get the biscuits into the oven now. I made the dough with 125 grams of plain flour, about probably 175 grams of whole wheat flour, 250 grams of butter, and a bit of salt. Rubbed it together. It was supposed to be puff pastry. Something went wrong. So yeah, I still need to experiment with that one. Yeah, I might just cut slices of it. These in, put them on for 15 minutes and see what it's looking like. Taking the chilies off the heat, so I'm just going to let them carry on sucking up all that tasty liquid while I crack on with the spinach dip. Bit of oil into the saute pan. Now I'm going to peel the onion but leave the root on because that's going to be my handle for the mandolin. Put in a bit of salt. Pull some of the moisture out of the onions. This is the crackers after 15 minutes. Still very soft, so I'm going to put them in for maybe even another 15. And we're looking to get a nice bit of caramelization on the onions, so you want a nice kind of golden brown. I've got 75 grams of walnut halves here. I'm going to stick those in the oven as well, for about 15-20 minutes. Once the onions are at a stage where they're mostly all kind of brown and softened and sticky and sweet, and then I'm going to pour in some vermouth. This is extra dry. You could use white wine, or you could use maybe some brandy or something like that. Anything you like really, you don't have to do this bit at all. I just like the taste. So I'm going to do about 60 mils of vermouth. That's about 4 tablespoons. You can see it gets absorbed really quickly. And also burns off a little bit, so you're not going to get much alcohol in there. Pull some spinach out the freezer. There's about 250 grams. I'm just going to cut this down a little bit because these are whole leaf spinach, so I can make it a little bit finer. Add the spinach and add the onions. More spinach would have been ideal, but that's all I had. chopping up some flat leaf parsley. There's about 15 grams of it or so. I'll put some in a bowl and I'll add that right at the end, just so it maintains a bit of freshness. I'll I'll put the rest in now. So give the walnuts a bit of a shake. Try a bit of the biscuit pastry fail, whatever we're calling it. Very crumbly because there's so much butter in there. And it's not as brittle as I feared. Might be okay. So I'll take them out of the oven and cool them down. Show you the garlic. Now that the biscuits are out of the oven, I've cranked it up to 200 just to finish off the garlic and the walnuts. Set my timer so I don't forget though. Another glug of vermouth. I'll now start layering in the flavour. Bit of black pepper. A little bit more salt. Well, I shouldn't have done that actually because the feta is quite salty. Never mind. Sprinkle of nutritional yeast. I'm going to add about 1/4 of this block, which is around about 50 grams or so. And just crumble that in. And then I'll work that in together. I'm going to grate some nutmeg in here. Oh, that's good. Turn the stove off, but I've left the pan on there just to keep heating through a little bit. I'll grab the walnuts and I'll chop these up. You want kind of, small little chunks. Now it's hot. Tip those in and then the parsley as well, the remaining fresh parsley. And just stir everything to combine. Because vegan feta is made out of coconut oil, as soon as it gets hot, it just melts. I'm just crumbling up some other little bits, and once the mixture's cooled down, I'll then fold this in, just so I can get some bites of feta as I'm eating it. I'll transfer this to a bowl just to let it cool down, and I can crack on with the next one. If you want the dip to be finer, just slice the onions thinner and maybe cut them in half again, so then the pieces are only that big. For the chili and pepper dip, chutney, I'm going to grate in some red onion. Not sure why I'm grating them, but that's what popped in my head. So that's what I'm going to do. Start heating these up. I'm going to chop up a red pepper. Keep a bag full of seeds. Every time I do a pepper. And once the bag gets full enough, I'll boil it in heavily salted water and then roast them. Great little snack, or sprinkle them on salads, that kind of thing. Really nice and crunchy kind of flavour and texture. Bit of salt on the onions again. And with the pepper, you'll see these white membranes. Just slice those out. And then I'm going to do these into quite a fine dice. So cut it into strips. Dice those. Add these to the pan. Just cook those down, let them soften for a good 5-6 minutes. I'm going to turn the heat off but leave the oven door shut with the garlic in there. I have a fear that 200 degrees was too hot. We'll see. I'm going with some balsamic vinegar, probably about a teaspoon. The vinegar's in there to give it a little bit of tanginess. I'm hoping that that'll kind of help preserve it a little bit in the fridge. I'm going to add in those tomatoes. I've also got a couple of fresh tomatoes that are well past the best, so I'm going to chuck those in as well. Add these into the pan. This is some juice that's drained out of those canned tomatoes. I'm going to put a bit of that in, just more to stop it catching while I do the chilies than anything else. And then I'm going to very finely chop and mince the chilies. And the chilies do have a lot of heat, but also a bit of sweetness from that barbecue sauce. I'm going to add about a tablespoon of tomato puree. Give that a good stir through. I've got some dark brown sugar, like dark muscovado, that kind of thing. So put in about half a tablespoon. And I'm hoping that's going to give it a really nice, rich, almost jam sort of texture. A bit more balsamic. So it's got a massive kick to it. This isn't a mild one, but there's also other things there. So it's not just chili giving you a big smack around the chops. But the tomato's got a nice bit of tanginess, sugar's there with a bit of sweetness. I might put a bit more sugar in. No, I'm going to use some pomegranate molasses. And this has got sweetness, but then there's also, oh, I know what I forgot. I forgot the spices. Teaspoon of pomegranate molasses. If you decide to give this a go, when you're frying the onions, before you put the onions in, put the spices in the oil, let them fry for a couple of minutes, and then start adding everything else. I'm just a bit scattered today. So I've got about an eighth of a teaspoon of cumin seeds, about half a teaspoon of caraway, and these are just to give it a really nice depth of flavour. About a quarter of a teaspoon of smoked paprika. This may well be a dip that needs to have a dip with it, so you know, a bit of yogurt, that kind of thing, just to cool it down a touch if you're not all mad about heat like I am. But give it a try before thinking, oh, I can't eat chili. It's delicious. Another tablespoon or so of the brown sugar. And the sugar is another one that I'm hoping will help preserve the life of it in the fridge. You know, sugar helps preserve things. This is the consistency we're after. Can you see how it's got lots of body to it? So it's nice and dense and thick. Final check. Perfect. That's really good. It has got heat, it has got a lot of intensity to it, but it's not overwhelming. It's nicely balanced with all the other flavours. Had I fried those spices off, it would have been even better. But hindsight and all that. Put that into a bowl, let it cool down, and do the bean one. So I've got a tin of butter beans. So I'm going to drain those. Now it's time to see how that garlic turned out. We'll find out. Let's have a little look. It's red hot still, hence the glove. So there's a lot of charring, but I think it's actually not too bad. I'm going to pull the cloves out. I think if I'd have just left it at 160, it would have been fine. So I'm very glad that I didn't do all of it at 200, which is how I was recommended to do it. I'd hoped that I was going to be able to use the oil that had been roasted in to kind of help make a puree, but not to worry. Put the garlic into a saucepan and the butter beans. I'm going to add a little splash of soy milk. I just want a bit of moisture in there to help blend it down. Vegan cream cheese, tablespoon and a half of cream cheese. And the only reason I'm heating it is just to get it to the point where it's going to be easier to blend, a bit softer. Splash more milk. This one's a really kind of simple, quick one. Well, I say quick, apart from the garlic. I'm going to use a stick blender for this. Just makes it easier than having to try and do it in a blender, a jug blender. It's very thick and pasty, more like a hummus, which you could have it as a hummus, kind of that style dip, but I want a bit more liquid. Touch more milk, and then a liberal dose of salt and pepper, and blend it up again. A little try on that. It needs tanginess. I'm going to add a little bit of plain yogurt. I'll do a spoonful of plain yogurt. Make sure you get one with no sugars, otherwise it's going to taste like, you know, breakfast. bit more salt and pepper. That's really good. Really, really, really good. The garlic's there, but it's really nice and mellow rather than being that sort of aggressive, garlicky, anti-vampire thing. Really nice and almost sweet. I'm going to leave the dips to cool down, so I'll see you in a little bit for supper time. Welcome to my favourite part, the eating part, of course. So I've got a little beer to cool my mouth down after that chilli, I reckon. I'm going to work my way down to the chilli, just so I don't ruin the flavours of the other two. So dive in with the spinach, feta and walnut. I mixed through those little pieces of feta once it cooled down, so you can see got some of my little biscuits. It actually turned out pretty good. I'm happy with that. Really had no idea what I was going to do with them when the puff pastry didn't work. So when in doubt, make crackers out of it. Give that a go. The flavours in there are fantastic, and the texture's great as well. There's lots of different sensations going on. A bit of crunchiness from the nuts, smooth creaminess from the spinach, sweet little pops from the onion. Great. The idea's just popped in my head, and I wish it had done so earlier, of putting barberries in there. I've got some little dried barberries, and they've got a really nice sour note to them. So I think that might have just notched it up another level. But there we go. The next time I'll do that. So then we've got the roast garlic and butterbean. That garlic's beautiful. Really mellow, but it's intense, it's there, but it's not aggressive. That'll probably work well with most kind of white beans, as long as they're soft enough to puree. So you could get some cannellini beans, which are the type, I think, that are used in baked beans. At a push, you could use baked beans and just rinse the tomato off them. That would work fine. But don't waste it, use the tomato for your tomato chutney, chilli chutney. Onto the firecracker. That's just packed full of flavour. There is that heat, it's there, but again, it's not slapping me around the face, it's just like, hi, I'm here. And there's so many different flavours going on in there, but they all pull together really well. The smokiness from the smoked paprika echoes, I guess there's like a slight smokiness in the chilies themselves. Could boost that up again with liquid smoke, that would work quite well. Or use chipotle chilies, smoked kind of chilies. That would work really good. If you don't have any brown sugar or the pomegranate molasses, feel free to use whatever you've got. But yeah, and that's just going to keep on improving as it gets older. And the caraway and cumin, they will just continue to leach out their fabulous little flavours. If you're a big fan of smearable food, then hit subscribe and tap the bell icon. And we'll see what else I can make in the next episode of Can I Make You Into Something Dunkable?